Welcome to the Rude Dog Show. You may not know the gentleman to my left, but after today, you certainly should know him. Not only that, but follow him. Danny Vietti, social writer for CBS Sports in Major League Baseball circuit. Danny, good afternoon. How are you?
Hanging in there. Baseball's back, so I'm feeling good. It's a good day today. How about you?
I'm not doing too bad at all. There's a lot to get to in a very compacted time frame that we have. But I wanted to kind of start off with the laundry list of players that are currently just deciding to sit out. The laundry list just keeps growing and growing and growing. I'm going to talk about the teams that do not have it, and then we're going to jump into the teams that actually do have guys that are opting out. Braves have Eric Young, a coach, which would be a very effective, essential component to the Braves system overall. Felix Hernandez, and of course the new Nick Markakis. I don't know how much of an impact he would have been, to be quite honest with you, but that remains to be seen. Diamondbacks, Mike Leake, that was kind of big. Pitcher dropping out there. Of course, David Price announcing that over the weekend that he will not return to the 2020 season because he's in fear of the COVID pandemic. We're talking about that as well. Brad Mills, Indians coach, Joe Ross, Ryan Zimmerman. That's going to hurt him a little bit at first base. Wellington Castillo, a catcher. Ian Desmond, Rockies outfielder, as well as Bill Evers and Bob McClure, which is a very key component for the Twins coaching crew. But of course, they were both sidelined by the organization. They're going to get paid regardless. I don't know how they decided to work that out, but they are. And of course, Tyson Ross, who's the only free agent that I know of, is currently not on a Major League Baseball team. Danny, welcome to the Rude Dog Show. Look, we're talking about how everything is circling back around. We talked about it before we got on the show and on the call about how COVID-19 basically taking the air out of stadiums with no fans. And when we talk about these different stadiums, practice facilities are being closed. They're trying to relocate at the last minute. How are these? I mean, and I understand a lot of these players have their families and they have their health to think of and their family's health to think of, and they don't want to contract it, much less give it to their family. Is this more of a personal decision to not play, in addition to, look, I have enough money, I just won a World Series, I don't need to play, I'm going to opt out for the 2020 season? How do pitchers, players, coaches basically make this determination? Is it circled around COVID-19? Is there more to it than that, or is that the only source?
I think there's a lot that go into it that people really aren't taking into account. If you notice that laundry list that you mentioned, a lot of those guys are veteran players. A lot of those guys have families. They're 30 and above. We have yet to see any young players, 25 and under, say, I'm not playing. A lot of that could be because they think they're relentless. Some of it could be because they don't feel they would contract the virus. And if they did, it wouldn't be a big deal. And a lot of them don't have families on a day-to-day basis. A lot of these young stars, Ronald Acuna to Gleyber Torres, they might not have the big families that Mike Trout's having a baby right now. Garrett Cole just had a baby. There's veteran guys that are having families. They have other things to think about. And it goes without saying, family, health, that comes before baseball. These guys have lives outside of the stadiums. There's a lot that's still to be determined. The Blue Jays haven't yet got guidance yet from their government whether they can have the regular season games at Rogers Center. They've given them acceptance to have their spring training in Rogers Center, but we still don't know if Toronto is going to be playing in Toronto this season, which is a strange thing. There's a lot that goes into it, and that laundry list you mentioned, it's going to start growing even more, because I think a lot of guys went into the spring training. A guy like Nick Markakis, they went into it with questions. They wanted to see how it would play out. And we haven't even been a week into this thing yet, and we're already having guys question the system. Sean Doolittle mentioned that we're not doing a good enough job providing results immediately. The Astros and the A's, just over the last 2 days, they've had to cancel workouts because they have yet to get their tests back from last Friday, their players' COVID tests. So the system is not perfect. I know it's a holiday weekend, and that probably would have slowed things up. But if we want this thing to happen, and that is a baseball season, we have to aim for perfection and fall a little bit short of that. But unfortunately, we're not aiming high enough, in my opinion. We're not aiming for perfection, and unfortunately, we're coming up way short.
It continues to be the case with different parts of sports. Also, taking not necessarily these solid precautions. I mean, the bubble could burst in Orlando in the NBA. NFL could see guys continually drop off because of the truncated training camp seasons. Now they're cutting off preseason games altogether. You see organizations trying to find ways to curb it in their own way, in their own justified manner, based on the results that they're looking at, based on viable information. Is Major League Baseball always going to be behind the curve when it comes to these type of testings? What can be done in addition to what's being done right now to help offset and curtail more players dropping off like flies?
I think informing the players is going to be most important, because we have yet to see, since this new spring training, summer camp, whatever you want to call it, we have yet to see Rob Manfred or any of the baseball executives really come out and lead. Today's Monday, so it's been about 5 days ish. We've seen Rob Manfred in the headlines a little bit, doing an interview here and there. We need a guy to step up and say, look, there was news that came out last Friday. There was, I believe it was 1.6% of players tested positive for COVID during those first tests. There was no one that came up to the podium and had a press conference and informed the players of what's going on. You're seeing, so I don't want to get too political here, but you're seeing governors across the country here. They're going up to the podium and they're going on live television. They're informing residents of their respective states of what's going on. They're updating them. Who's updating the players? They're getting texts left and right. They're having to hear news through the media in order to be informed about what's going on with their own jobs, with their own daily lives. Major League Baseball needs to have somebody. May it be someone that they hire, maybe it could be a new hire, or they need to have someone already in their system stepping up, informing these players. It could be just a newsletter every single day informing these guys what's going on. But unfortunately, there's so much unknown. And I understand that a single guy might not be able to inform so many different players of everything that's going on. But a simple, like I said, a simple newsletter, a simple press conference would really go a long ways, because we've seen it, especially these last couple of months. The players and the owners, the trust is not exactly there between those two sides, and the trust between Major League Baseball and its players, it's fractured, to say the least. And so going into the season, they're not building any more trust by not having a guy step up and informing these players on a day-to-day basis. I really think they need to look themselves in the mirror. That's Major League Baseball. And they need to do a better job of just being transparent in everything that's going on a day-to-day.
Yeah, I do as well. I've always been critical of Rob Manfred, only for the standpoint, and you can go back a little bit further. I'm not going to get political either. I don't like talking politics in sports. Unfortunately, there is politics in sports. You have guys coming out of absolutely nowhere within the locker room stating, and I'm not going to use players' names, so you can find that you can Google it or what have you, but guys saying that not very comfortable talking about racial issues inside of a locker room, predominantly by other races. And so being able to speak out wasn't usually player friendly. I don't know how much truth there is to that or isn't to that, only for the simple fact that it took him how many years to finally actually say something, to speak up and speak out. Personally, if you have a problem with something, I've had this conversation back and forth on social media. Of course, that kind of goes round and round, kind of trying to pin the tail on the donkey. But when we're talking about transparency, honesty, being open with your feelings in relation to and how it relates to your locker room, how it relates to your mindset, how do you feel about playing in the upcoming season? What is your day-to-day like? I've always been critical of Rob Manfred, only for the simple standpoint that during these negotiations to start this truncated Major League Baseball season, I hate to use that word redundantly, but it's completely accurate to what's going on right now and very effective, I might say, that Rob Manfred himself was not in direct contact with the NFL, with Major League Baseball PA. In other words, in order to help kind of facilitate talks more in person than it would be to Zoom call or to send a text message, as you alluded to. I think that Rob Manfred may not be the guy for the job. Again, I'm not into politics. I just want the right guy in the right position to do the right thing. And I don't think Rob Manfred did it. And it kind of self-imploded when you're talking about what happened with the Astros and the scandal and, different clubs also being penalized after the fact. They don't get their titles stricken. They just get draft picks. They get penalized money and things of that nature, kind of similar to what happens in the NFL. So I think the system is broken to an extent. I think it's getting better. Could it get better? Could you see more activity? if there's anyone, would you want Bud Selig back? If there's one commissioner you would want back other than Rob Manfred as commissioner, who would that be?
Selig definitely had his fair share of criticism, and much of that deserved as well. So I think Major League Baseball, to your point, I don't want to jump and say that it's broken, but there's definitely some lines that have been detached, if you will, over the last few decades. Major League Baseball as a whole has got to be better. And to your point, I think it is getting better. They're doing a better job. We talk about social media a lot. They're doing a better job with social media too. They're allowing content creators to create content. The last 5 years, they were having copyright issues between guys like John Boy to Pitching Ninja, some of the bigger content creators. They were throwing out copyright issues left and right, and it was handcuffing these guys, these great, really talented, creative guys from giving baseball the exposure it needs. Major League Baseball saw it, at least at first, they saw it as if these guys were stealing their content, and Major League Baseball wasn't getting the attention that they wanted it to get. In the process they wanted to go, at least. And so the last couple of years they're doing a better job. They're allowing Pitching Ninja and John Boy, and there's a handful, those are just a couple of the guys, but there's a handful of creators out there that are building the game through youth. Major League Baseball's done a better job themselves on social media too. And so to say I want a new commissioner, I don't necessarily want to jump that far, because we've seen over the past however many decades, we've gotten a new commissioner, and a lot of that really has a lot of the same issues remain. I don't think Rob Manfred handled the cheating scandal with the Astros or with the Red Sox, and then all of a sudden there was news of the Yankees as well. We've yet to really hear what they're going to respond with the Yankees, or what they're going to do or implicate the Yankees with from those implications. So there's a lot of questions still remain within that Major League Baseball office. Rob Manfred's getting a lot of that criticism. I actually thought Manfred did a really good job. He earned some of my respect the last week of those negotiations. He needed to step up. If we wanted to have a Major League Baseball season, he needed to step up. He did. He said, look, we're going to have a 60-game season. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's get these I's dotted and these T's crossed. And they did. Within 48 hours, they had a season. We were at a point, I want to say it was a Wednesday or something. Mm-hmm. We were done. Everybody was upset with baseball. Everybody was done with baseball. 48 hours later, we were having a season ready to go. So the narrative completely changed. I think a lot of that credit goes to Manfred and him stepping up. But it goes back to my point earlier. You can't just make a statement and let it fall through and kind of let it play out as if these players are lab rats. You have to step up. You have to be hands-on as a commissioner, especially in times like these and such the circumstances that they are. You have to step up and you have to oversee things with a hands-on approach.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I think I don't want to not give Manfred any type of credit. I do, certainly. But what would actually convince me to give him the credit that he deserves is, as we were talking about earlier, this is Rudy Reyes. Danny Vietti joins me here on the Rude Dog Show. It's about action. It's not about words. It's about action. And that's applicable to all commissioners and all major league sports worldwide, for that matter. Soccer, football, as they want to call it, the NFL, NASCAR, everybody's going about things the right way. When you talk about Major League Baseball, I think what could really be the defining moment for Manfred is to not only have these COVID tests come back negative, but to reach out to these players, if not individually, collectively as a club, to say, look, I understand we're doing some trying times right now. Let's find a way to get this done. Let's stay safe, sound, healthy, keep ourselves healthy, keep our families healthy, and really hit home that he's connected with the players. I think that once the season is done, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but if the season goes through without a hitch, without any major stars, like we were talking about Mike Trout earlier, he just had a baby, guys who are starting to build their families, not really at the end of their career, but kind of a midway, or kind of a point where they can make the decision as to whether or not they want to retire. I mean, Trout can retire and call it a day. I mean, he's a multi-million-dollar man there in Anaheim, but I think Manfred could really put the screws to everything and make it a solid building house if there's a successful season and the right team is crowned for the pennant. That's just my opinion. What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with you. And I don't mean to talk in circles here, but going back to your point too, let's say hypothetically, or even I'll take myself as an example. Okay, I work remotely from home for the most part. And all of us at CBS Sports are ever since this COVID pandemic has gone on. My boss, and I'm not bragging here, I'm simply laying an example of what Major League Baseball should be doing. Our president of CBS Sports, Jeff Bertula, he updates us on a daily basis. He sends us an email. He has a meeting every Friday, and he offers what he calls office hours every Thursday for anyone to come in that has questions, whether they're questions about COVID, whether they're questions about the business, whether they're questions about where the company is going, and whether we should be concerned about the future of CBS Sports. I'm working by myself. If you look at my office here, I'm all by myself here. I got my dog next to me, and that's about it. I don't have to worry about other people. Major League Baseball players, they're going into their stadiums right now. They're dealing with this. I would guess, I know they're breaking it into morning workouts, afternoon and evening. There's probably 50 plus people in that building at least. And they're not being educated about what's going on. They're not being informed. They could be walking next to a guy who could be contracting the virus. They would have no idea because they haven't gotten their results back. They don't, and even if they can't get the results, they need to at least let them know what's going on. They owe that to the players. If they expect them to be risking their health on a day-to-day basis, they owe it to the players to tell them whatever they know, even if it's barely nothing. Maybe they know one or two facts that they could share. They need to be sharing that on a day-to-day basis. If we want to crown a champion and it be legitimate, we're going to have to get from point A to point B first before we can even think about crowning a champion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And to your point as well, I work for iHeartMedia, and they're always on top of, if you're feeling down, if you're not feeling quite well, if this being indoors, working from home is adversely affecting your ability to perform, your ability to sleep, your ability to eat and live a somewhat normal life when you're basically stuck at home. And I do all my stuff from home. I'm not in the studio. Predominantly, I do it out of Denver, Colorado. Well, I'm in California. So, it's constant contact. And I think that it proves to the point that if you get ahead of the curve by going about things in the right way, in the right manner, you can certainly find others and other organizations that are willing to do the same thing. And again, to your point, I think Major League Baseball could follow that type of dynamic that CBS Sports has, and lots of other companies do it as well, not just sports entities or media entities in general. They're all finding their way to reach out to their employees and say, look, if you have a problem, if there's an issue, reach out to me, call me, email me, throw up a flare, send smoke signals, do something, let me know that you need help. And I think that the players themselves are starting to do that because they're becoming informed more so about what the progressions are, where we're at as a nation in relation to what the current total number is. I think it's over 500,000 or some nonsense number like that. Right now, it's just ridiculous. But if we just find a way to, and I say this on social media, I don't want to sound like a social media freak or anything, but that's kind of what we're all basically doing right now. We're not interviewing players. We're not talking to players. All we're doing is utilizing social media to let people know, look, hey, we're here. We care. We want to get your solid feedback. My statement would be to all those guys is, look, hashtag mask up. Just mask up. If nothing else, just put the mask on and call it a day and find a way to try to curb this thing in some way, shape, or form. So that's about the message that I would have in relation to where we stand from not only a national standpoint, but Major League Baseball. Danny Vietti joins me here. He does fantastic things. Go throw him a follow. Danny Vietti, Vietti, on Twitter. He does a lot of great things for CBS Sports Major League Baseball circuit. Danny, thanks, man. I appreciate your time. I wish you the best. Keep you and your dog safe.
Thank you so much, Rudy. Stay safe down there in Southern California, all right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Take care. Thanks, Danny. Bye.